Welcome to another episode of Kamalayan, Journeys to Self-Awareness. I'm your host, Stephanie, and I have my co-host here, Leo.
Hi, everyone, and welcome again to another conversation, another interesting conversation. We're excited to have you guys here and excited to share with you what we have in store.
I know this is something that I think for many of us we can relate.
Mhm,
Certainly, parang this topic I suggested this because a lot of my clients, because I work with a lot of Filipino clients here. A lot of them, their parents were immigrants from Pinas, and so
mhm,
this is something that they've really experienced. And so we're going to talk today about yung Filipino family styles of communication.
mm,
So primarily yung not talking, or we can call it avoidance, or sweeping things under the rug,
mm,
or
mhm.
yung talking to others, which is talking to the other titas and titos about it, talking to
Ah,
everybody but the person na gusto mong kausapin o kailangan mong kausapin. And
mm,
then the other style, which is like the reactive, na
mm.
with every little thing lang, magre-react ka agad, right? A big
Yeah.
reaction.
So the
So,
second one is sort of like an avoidant way of reacting.
in a sense din, right? Kasi
Okay.
parang unavoidant din. Kasi, oh,
Yeah.
actually, yung second one, which is talking to others, is more avoidant. Yung first one
Mm.
would the not talking, maybe that would classify as like parang freeze mode, dissociating, like
Uh-huh.
talagang stonewalling, right? Parang
Shutting
ganun
down.
in essence,
Yeah.
shutting down. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so this parang primarily yung three styles. So,
Mm.
Lay, do you want to open the conversation? Want to
Well, I have
share a
to
bit?
admit that when Stephanie did present this, I mean, I'm speaking, of course, to our listeners. I kind of got anxious and I was telling her that, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm going to be triggered during this conversation because I'm in it. I mean, I agree with what Stephanie said that, I mean, a lot of Filipino families adhere to this way of communication.
Mm-hmm.
And my family is not different. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and the families of my friends as well. I mean, when we do have conversations about issues that we have, a lot of it has to deal with the inability to express, the inability to process what's
Mm-hmm.
expressed, so, and it goes all the way even to your end, Stephanie. I mean, in the
Mm-hmm.
US, where you have Filipino Americans
Yeah.
who adhere to the same way of talking or dealing with things. So I lied when I said earlier that I was excited because there is a part of me that's also quite nervous. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to. Oh, this is actually interesting because this is one of the things that I've observed about ways of communicating, especially in Filipino families. There's a lot of guilt when you try to
Yeah.
communicate or express yourself. And I think, I mean, real time, you guys are already observing it, that I'm getting nervous that I might say something stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, ito yung tinatawag natin sa therapy like the present process, right? It's coming up right now.
Uh-huh.
'Di ba? So parang, it's a good time to like notice that. So even
Yeah.
for you, Lay, na-notice mo na yan, yung guilt coming up for our listeners that are already choosing to pick this episode and
Yeah.
are already getting that sense na we're gonna talk
Yeah.
about it. So parang
Yeah.
notice mo lang yung sensation sa body mo, notice mo lang yung feelings
Mhm.
mo. And so just noticing it, taking a couple of deep breaths and just kind of just going through the motion.
Mhm.
No? Yeah. So a little bit sa experience ko din when I thought, yeah, aside from the fact na a lot of my clients have wanted or at least want to talk about it with me,
Mhm.
yung my personal experience naman like growing up for me was more kind of a mix of actually a mix of all three, right?
Mhm.
But primarily yung talaga matatandaan ko is like usually the not talking about it, right?
Uh-huh.
Not talking about it.
Mhm.
And in a sense parang it's talked about it. I think more on talked about it in the moment. Kung for example, like I messed up or I don't know, I made like a dumb teenage decision. Thus
Yeah.
after that, parang walang processing after. Like it's like you
Uh-huh.
did something wrong and that's pretty much it. And then
Mhm.
these are my words. Ito yung ano ko, this is it, blah, blah, blah. Tapos walang after. So
Yeah.
usually what I would do, kasi I didn't have anybody, wala akong siblings.
Mhm.
So what I would do, I would journal a lot, Lay.
Uh-huh.
So yung journal ko, I kid you not, our listeners, like I must have had like 15 journals, like
Mm-hmm.
growing up. And I still have them. I brought them with me kasi I love
Mm-hmm.
them to death. They were
Yeah.
sila yung saving force ko. So
Yeah.
dami kong journals. So yun yung ginawa ko, right?
Mm.
So I didn't have anybody else. I sure had friends, like, but
Yeah.
primarily yung journals, yung way of processing ko. Kasi I still had a lot of feelings. So even if hindi ako kinakausap or like there's a reaction coming towards me, or
Mm-hmm.
pinapag-usapan ako, like I still didn't have anybody to talk to. So,
Yeah.
dun ako sa journal. Yeah,
Yeah.
journal tsaka girlfriends ko. Yun yung
Mm.
primarily, experience ko. And it still happens wherein yung family ko din, not just like immediate family ko, but even my relatives. There's
Yeah.
still that sense of not talking,
Yeah.
talking to others, side comments,
Uh-huh.
no? Or
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
humor, or like
Yeah.
talaga beating around the bush.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like, ako kasi like over the course of education ko, like, it's like, dude, just lay it on already. Pero alam
Yeah.
ko na obviously, iba
Yeah.
pa sila. They're still in a different process. So,
Yeah.
I just parang bite my tongue. Tapos
Yeah.
hindi ko lang sinasabi.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's
Yeah,
been,
there's a lot of backpedaling involved as well, diba? You mentioned kasi about humor, and I couldn't help but think about backpedaling. Kasi parang uh I mean, even the expression a char, like when you joke about something,
yes,
so that lang it doesn't sound offensive, you don't want to offend anyone,
yes,
or you don't want it to be too serious, then you have to say char, or like among
yeah,
gay people we say charot or ch ch
chuz.
chos, yeah, yung mga ganun. So parang so in a way parang there's also a form of sorry, of passive aggression also involved, because
Mhm.
you lay it out there and then you babawiin mo, you take it back, because it
Yeah,
exists also not just between friends, but also among siblings and relationships with parents.
yeah.
Obviously your mom and dad won't say charot or whatever, but there's a way that they present something and then babawiin nila, um para lang it basically messes with your mind, right? In
Mm,
as much as
mm,
it mollifies the situation or it makes it lighter, it does something in your head. And I think a lot of times also parents, I don't know if they're aware of it, but sometimes they're n- they are actually aware of it. Na parang there's that form of manipulation na that they'll present it because at some point it'll eat you, and then you'll
yeah,
have to adhere to it.
yeah.
You have no choice but to do whatever they bid or whatever. So there are different ways, and it manifests rather in different ways. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, these forms of communications, I also want to make it clear to our listeners, it just doesn't exist amongst family relationships, familial
Mhm,
relationships, but also between friends. So
mhm. Oh yeah,
yeah.
yeah, for sure. I mean, I can see Dinlay just commenting on what you said na yung magsasabi ng something tapos either charot or like from coming from the parents or like family members like, oh, just kidding, or like, hey, hey,
Uh-uh.
or yung ganon, right? And I
Yeah.
imagine din na parang, yes, you're right na whether it's to parang hindi, yung blow is not gonna be as hard.
Yeah.
But I can also then see on the other end na parang ano ba talaga? Like, what is it? Like, ito
Yeah.
ba? Ito ba? Like, it's confusing, no?
Hmm.
So, for a child na doesn't know gray area, it's
Yeah.
confusing,
Yeah.
no? So, yun lang yung parang, in a sense, like yung issue that I can just anticipate with
Mm.
it, no? Na ano. So, yeah, I was just wanting to say then, like, based on this topic, yung parang why parents like don't talk, like why not just parents, obviously, but again why sa atin why we don't talk. So yung one of the things that I can think of, I'm gonna kind of like maybe look at it from the perspective ng parents kasi ito yung parang
Hmm.
dynamic na mas obvious sa atin, but I can imagine then no na why parents nag-aalanganin na magsalita is I can imagine again hindi to na-normalize,
Yeah.
right? So I imagine either kind of growing up in their household, then hindi to na normalize like growing up.
Mm.
So a lot of times, yun na nakita natin is like when it's not normalized, when it's not taught, when it's very foreign, parang it's not, obviously it naturally parang translates in sa own families nila wherein they don't know what to do,
Yeah.
right? They don't know, they can't create a space because they don't know how to do it,
Yeah. How to
right?
process. Yeah. You mentioned earlier about how kids, I mean, of course, we don't want to generalize, but a lot of the time, gray areas are difficult for kids to comprehend, right? So when you
Mm-hmm.
do passive aggressive behavior, manipulative, or you know, backpedaling and whatnot, uh, it's actually like you said, it's the trauma passed on from their own environment, from their own
Mm-hmm.
parents, from the parents of the parents,
Mm-hmm.
and then it goes way back pa. So it's
Sure.
basically a cycle, right? It's a
Yeah,
vicious cycle because once the kid is exposed to that, when the kid grows up, eventually ganun din siya magtrato ng mga ibang tao at saka sa family niya,
for sure.
their own kids and all that. So it's uh it's, I guess, intergenerational trauma,
Yeah.
right? Because you mentioned about how environments affect, I mean, you try to understand where your parents are coming from, so that's the way they were built, that's the way they grew up,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the way they showed it eventually. And we're lucky enough that we've managed to be a little bit more self-aware, that we managed to catch that
Mm-hmm.
already, and that we see where they're coming from, because not everybody has that opportunity.
Yeah.
Like, our parents weren't able to see that, so they aren't aware, unless of course
Yeah.
it's really discussed and brought to their face. Pero on a normal day, they wouldn't be aware na parang, okay, ganito pala ako kasi ito yung kung gaano ako pinalaki.
Yeah.
Paano ako pinalaki and all that. So there's unawareness, but the truth of the matter is that that's what they grew up with.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
sobra. And so yeah, so I can see that, no, na talagang it's not really through some bad intention
Yes.
necessarily, right?
Yeah.
Talagang wala talaga, right? The skills weren't
Uh-huh.
there, it wasn't there lang talaga. And
Mm-mm.
so I know it's kasi because I work with families then, and so a lot of times I help be able to really kind of see na obviously if you don't have the knowledge, if you don't have the foundation, how could you possibly be able to like pass it on, no? And
Yeah.
again, we're not kind of excusing, for example, if it comes to physical abuse or violence or anything like that, but at the same time, yeah, kung wala talaga yung foundation, then it's hard to kind of really pass it on. It's hard to kind of for them to create that environment, no?
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's yung other thing that I was thinking about then, why yung parents like prefer to sweep it under the rug or don't really talk, is that um intolerance to like distress or like easily overwhelmed.
Uh-huh.
So I see this a lot wherein it's too much if pag-usapan, right? Because when you talk about something na mahirap, it's like already whether the parent anticipates a big reaction from the kids or like the other parents or the other siblings. So na-anticipate na yon. So it's like I would rather not talk about it because I anticipate that the distress or like yung
Oh.
response is going to be big,
Yeah.
right? So I would rather
Yeah.
not talk about it. Or I'm beginning to talk about it, pero the moment na magpupush back yung bata or yung teenager, which happens,
Hmm.
right? Because of course, magpupush back tayo. We're just kids. We're just pushing boundaries. That's what we do, right?
Yeah.
Pero the
Yeah.
moment mag-push back yung kid ng boundaries, yung parents kagad, parang, ayoko to
Yeah.
pag-usapan, right? And then they
Yeah.
backpedal and then they don't want to talk about it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So they sweep things under the rug, right?
Yeah.
Which again, then yung opportunity for yung
Mm-hmm.
discussion is missed,
Yeah.
right? Kasi then
Yeah.
nag-shut down yung parents or don't want to talk about it, then yung kids like left hanging,
Yeah.
right? So yun yung nakikita ko din na parang this sense of like intolerance to distress or like
Yeah.
intolerance to like feelings. So I can
Mm-hmm.
see why yung parents din magsha-shut down
Yeah.
in that
To
way.
to piggyback on what you just said, when parents already parang nauunahan nila, or when they
Yeah.
already expect the worst, I feel like kasi in professional development, there's this important phrase that's constantly used, and that would be management of expectations. I feel like a lot of times parents mismanage their expectations in
Mm.
such a way that they're only expecting the worst and they don't see the other side of things. Yeah, because that's
Yeah.
yan medyo kulang yan na pagka-manage ng expectations. Eh. You're only looking at
Yeah.
the negative, right? So you're not seeing the other possibilities. Um, uh,
Which could help the relationship. It could
exactly.
help the
Yeah.
child, no?
Yeah, like for example, okay, fine, you already see na, okay, magre-react yung anak ko kung sasabihin ko to, pero hindi nila nako-consider na, wait, what if i-try ko na ibang ibang way of presenting the
Mm-hmm.
issue? Baka naman mag-react siya differently. Or
Mm-hmm.
kung, for example, alam ko magre-react siya like that, the other part of the expectation is, then I'll try another kind of way.
Yeah.
So yung mga those tiny things, I feel like a lot of times na it's forgotten because ayun nga we're focused na, oh my god, ito na yun,
Y-
mag explode.
eh,
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, that's good, Lay, na yun nga, yung exactly what you said na hindi nakikita yung other part of it or what could be,
Mm-hmm.
no? Kung
Yeah.
if magpa-persist lang tayo, if we just kind of like, push it a little bit lang. And
Mm-hmm.
I think sa akin din, yung, I think sa atin din like as human beings, sometimes kasi yung distress can be really overwhelming sa parents, like the
Mm-hmm.
sensation, no, of like being
Yeah.
flooded with emotions.
Yes.
So yung natural, yung physical sensations natin, which is either yung heart rate, yung heart beating fast, yung chest tightening, yung just parang flooding tayo. And parang hijack tayo ng body natin, right? So
Yeah.
I can also see once we're in hijack mode, talagang it's hard. It's hard to kind
Yeah.
of, get out of that. So I can also see why yun nga talagang
Yeah.
once mag-flood na, wala na. There's no
Yeah.
new information coming
Yeah.
in, right?
Yeah. It's a
Yeah,
very natural reaction. I mean, you see it, for example, when you touch a hot cup of coffee. I
yeah,
mean, your hand just immediately, so
exactly.
it's a knee-jerk reaction and it's very natural. So, and it's understandable that, people react that way, that they fly, yeah, they just escape it, or they
Yeah.
turn away, because it's natural. Pero yeah, as human beings and as thinking beings, as self-aware beings, I think it's important also to consider nga na parang in as much as we react, we have knee-jerk reactions, it's very natural that there is also that side of our being
Mm-hmm.
as thinking beings that we can process, that we have the opportunity to not just be reactive.
Yeah,
Yeah, to not
exactly.
just be reactive.
There's
Yeah.
that other piece then. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yung other piece then, yung other third na
Mm-hmm.
why parents then have the tendency to not want to talk or avoid.
Yeah.
Um, in a sense, then parang the fear of making it worse when it's talked about.
Ah.
No?
Uh-huh.
Kasi when I work with families, because yung sometimes the concern coming from the parents is like, especially this is more prevalent, I think, with like teens,
Yeah.
tsaka like adults, na adult children. Now, I don't want to talk about it kasi already perhaps yung relationship nila is already like on thin ice.
Mm.
So kung kakausapin ko pa yung anak ko about something, the sensitive matter,
Yeah.
and mag-react yung anak ko, like I'm
Yeah.
worried na it's gonna break our relationship or it's gonna, snap yung rope or whatever
Mm.
it is, no?
Yeah.
And so I can also see why, nga, this fear, this fear is bigger than yung act of perhaps maybe either repairing yung relationship or like what could be na pwedeng mangyari sa relationship, right? But
Yeah.
this fear becomes so overwhelming na ayoko na lang, wag na lang. So
Mm.
then I would rather not talk about it kasi it might get worse.
Yeah.
It might hurt yung anak ko even more. Or like for example, yung yeah, it may hurt my child. And yes, it may hurt. I say that hurt not in the moment, but I can also imagine it obviously like it will build their character then, right? For
Yeah.
example, like I don't know, like you just tell a child the truth na instead that you lie about it or don't say that, you say, no, first place ka kahit hindi ka first place. You're
Yeah.
like, oh, you're protecting the child, but in essence, you're just building the character. You just say, hey,
Yeah.
like, kid, just I see you, you're hurt, but hey, we'll just it's just a time to like regroup and let's just get try to be
Yeah.
better next time. I'll help
Yeah.
support you, all of those things, no?
Yeah.
Kaysa naman na either embellish natin or whatever it is. Because
Yeah.
then it doesn't really
Yeah.
kind of help in the long run.
Yeah. I mean, it just goes to show you na parang how this cycle, this intergenerational trauma can be so vicious kasi parang in some relationships nga, the wound is just so deep that
Mm-hmm.
and the fear is just too overwhelming, as you put it earlier,
Yeah.
that it's just so difficult to I to not f- to rather so difficult to face it,
Mm-hmm.
so you'd rather just either coast on the status quo, just let it be, because
Yeah.
you don't want it to get bigger,
Mm-hmm.
or you'd rather just sweep it under the rug. So it's an interesting, it made me realize, I mean, I understand it even all the more. uh, Sorry, not just understand, but I'm more understanding of why parents actually react a certain way. Um, I guess that's what I'm trying to say, because
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's difficult. I mean, not everybody has access to therapy. Not
Mm-hmm.
everybody has the time to research about, how to communicate effectively, or to, stuff like
Yeah.
that. So yeah, people are just trying to get by, and it's challenging. It's very
Yeah.
challenging. Yeah.
It
Um,
is.
and in as much as it's challenging and you try to be understanding, it's also unfortunate because it costs people a lot. It
Mm-hmm.
costs relationships a lot. Ang daming nasasayang. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought about because you've presented the different ways, right, of how
Mm-hmm.
people react, how parents react, and all that. When I was trying to piece things together about this topic, I thought of where else can it come from? What else are the aspects why parents resort to this? So we
Mm-hmm.
mentioned about the inability passed on from previous generations. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that one we can both agree, and that one we've seen time and again. And the other thing that I've uh, put down here in my notes was yung cultural aspect, the societal aspect of it
Mm-hmm.
all. Um, uh, our culture, in my experience and in my observation, it's very pride driven. So saving face is of the importance.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times, kasi when we're in uncomfortable situations, emotional situations, we are not in control, and
Mm-hmm. That's true.
are basically become ugly, and we don't want to be ugly in front of other people,
Mm-hmm.
right? So in the business of looking good, you'd rather maintain looking good and sweep things under the rug and
Mm-hmm.
hide behind that mask of beauty. I think it's the premise also behind a lot of these social media filters, etc. Pero we see it in our society, in our cultural upbringing in the Philippines, right? There's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of pride, and showing of emotions is always equated to weakness,
Mm-hmm.
right? And nobody wants
Mm-hmm.
to seem weak to other people. And I know that a lot of times parents also don't want to seem weak in front of their kids.
Yeah.
That's why
Yeah.
they either have that face na parang, okay, but I'm not affected by what you're saying
Mm-hmm.
because I have to be the strong one.
Mm-hmm.
So may ganun din na aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Tapos pati na rin yung mga anak, yung ayoko mag-share kasi kailangan ko ipakita na kaya ko to. Kaya ko to, and I don't want to seem too sensitive. Ayoko maging OA na kahit ano lang talagang hurt talaga ako and all that. So I don't want to keep on talking about my feelings. So it's not just weakness, it's also a
Mm-hmm.
pride thing, on
Yeah.
both ends.
It
So,
is.
'di ba, it further exacerbates talaga this whole
Yeah.
cycle, So, and it manifests in different ways. For parents, there is the dismissal, there is the reprimand. Between friends, there's the mockery, unsolicited advice. Kasi parang they get awkward na parang, shit, ito na, may mga feelings na tayong pinag-uusapan. So I guess I'm just gonna turn on, this is the
Yeah.
advice I'm gonna give, you know. And it, like you said, it doesn't come from a bad place. It doesn't necessarily come from a manipulative place.
Yeah.
It comes from just the inability na parang, how am I going to handle this?
Yeah.
You know, how am I going to handle it? So, and then just to add on to that, also for
And
the
sitting with the
kids part,
discomfort, like, di ba? And sitting
yeah,
with the discomfort, no? Kasi
yeah,
parang we feel like we need to do something, but actually,
yeah,
okay lang mag-sit, okay lang
yeah.
ganyan. But yeah.
I think it's part of the, we all want to be in control of something also, and the parents don't want to
Mhm.
lose control. The kids also don't want to lose control. That's why you hear it a lot of times also in movies, or when people comment when you're having a bad day. Now you got this and all that, and parang
Mhm.
I wouldn't. It comes from a good place. I don't want to take that
Mhm.
away from people. They just want to boost other people up. Pero there's a lot of times also na parang nadi-dismiss na, wait, I'm feeling bad already. I don't have the energy or the strength to like to get it, to be, you know,
Yeah.
on top of it. Sorry, hindi ko kaya and all that. So a lot of times yun nga na nakakalimutan siya. So parang, oh, sige na nga, I'll do what you tell me. I'll handle it, you know. So nakakalimutan siya. And then eventually it
Yeah.
reappears naman in another form. So
Exactly.
yeah, so it goes back to pride, saving face. I mean, the cultural aspect of it, if I go back to what I introduced earlier.
Yeah.
And then may nasulat din ako dito na I feel like it's also important. Another aspect also that can be another topic of conversation is how much guilt is involved, you know.
Yeah.
Um, Kasi I wrote down here, that's why I put it under societal, because I feel like this pride thing, this machismo thing, you know,
Mhm.
it's already been there since pre-colonial times pa, pero
Mhm.
na-exacerbate siya, of course, pagdating ng mga the colonialists, you know,
Mhm.
that with religion, that
Oh
we need
yeah.
to, you know, we have to be aware of what other people think, you know, so we
Yeah.
have to put on a brave face. Kailangan hindi tayo mapahiya. Kasi kung if we
Mhm.
show our feelings, mapapahiya tayo because we don't want to come undone. You know,
Mm,
we don't want to
mm,
show
mm,
na nagkakalat
mm,
tayo and
mm.
all that. So a lot of these things come into play too. That's why a lot of it is culturally, um, my cultural aspect siya,
For
you know.
sure.
Yeah, my religious aspect with the whole guilt thing na parang, oh my God, I'm being too selfish. I'm talking about my own feelings. I'm talking about me. Eh, 'di ba?
Mhm.
We're man for others. We have to think of others and all that.
Yeah.
So why am I thinking about me? So I feel so guilty. Um, Tapos may shaming pa yan because
Yeah.
why is it just you? You know, bakit
Yeah.
hindi mo na lang ipabahala sa Diyos? Na parang,
Right.
in a way, I get also where they're coming from because there is value also in just relinquishing to something bigger. You know,
Mhm.
I see the value in that. Pero kung minsan talaga parang hindi siya nagagamot lang sa the belief na ganun eh.
Yeah, it's not just that.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
not
it's
just
not just
that.
that.
Yeah.
There's also
Na,
that piece, other piece.
yeah, kung hindi mo na nagamot, if you weren't able to remedy it, I mean, remedy the trigger, remedy where it's coming from,
Mhm.
see where the source is, parang you can't just keep on saying, now let's just leave it up to God.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Mhm.
so I mean that breeds the aspect also of guilt, that's why a lot of times also
Mhm.
the kids feel guilty of sharing, in sharing, with
Yeah.
sharing. Oh my God, my prepositions, but anyways, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, no, kasi parang gusto lang i-comment about niyan briefly like kasi
Mm,
it is kasi parang we fall under the umbrella of like a collectivist culture, right? Thinking
uh-huh.
about others, parang
Yeah,
oh, like we share kind of feelings, you're not even thinking about other people, about
yeah,
how this might affect us, yung
yeah,
ganon.
yeah,
And 'di ba yung Western is more kind of individualistic. And I could see yung value then of being in a collectivist culture. Yes, there's value in that. But at the same
yeah,
time then when it involves like these things na importante that are building blocks to really having a healthy form of communication. I can see that that also kind of gets in the way if like we're always thinking about other people, then
Mhm.
essentially parang we're just becoming people pleasers, right?
Yeah,
Na we're always just thinking about other people and we're not
yeah,
thinking about we're denying our own feelings,
yeah. I
right?
don't
And
want
it's just
to.
not helpful.
Definitely, it's not healthy, neither is it helpful. Um, but I just also want to make it clear to our listeners that we don't want to equate collectivist way of living. Sorry, was that what you said earlier?
Yeah,
Yung
collectivist
collective
na culture, yeah. Uh-huh.
na culture. Uh, we don't want to equate it obviously with people pleasing. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that,
Yeah.
but it breeds that, right?
Yeah.
And how does it breed that? Is because the more that we try to people please, the more that we dismiss other people's emotions or sweep things under the rug or not process or have conversations about it, parang the more it also builds emotional insecurity. And that's where a lot of people pleasing comes from. This
Yeah.
insecurity na parang I need to feel loved, so I
Yeah.
need to please. That's where a lot of it is coming from, diba?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, yeah. And so yung other aspect then about why parents like perhaps maybe get reactive
Uh-huh.
it's like um actually also why parents can also parang refer to other people or consult or talk to other people kasi nilagay ko dito like it is in thinking about yung reactiveness, I can also imagine it as some sort of like an act of desperation, right? A plea. I don't know what to do. And so I
Yeah.
feel like itong big reaction ko, this is probably gonna get you to see how desperate, how helpless I feel about the situation,
Mm-mm.
how big of a deal this is sa akin, right? Because I see that, right? So I see that na it feels like in my own family and also sa clients ko na it feels like I have to make this big statement para lang maintindihan mo how either hurtful this was sa akin or how important you are to me or how much I value your safety
Mm.
or how much I want you to be well, yung
Yeah.
ganon, right?
Yeah.
And so it tends to be that big, reaction, right? Because again, I don't know what else to do, right? It's
Yeah.
this plea essentially,
Yeah.
right? I know, and may thoughts ka about that one, Lay?
I was just about to say na a lot of times also parents are not aware of that. Na parang in as much as they talk to other people about their problematic kids or issues that they have
Yeah,
with kids, etc. Or even when they make chismis or when they mock their kid or whatever, parang they are unaware of it because ayun nga, it just boils down to the fact that they just didn't know how to process or they don't know how to process. So like you said,
yeah,
they go through different means. And I think it's important for a lot of kids and us. I mean, like me, one of the things that I just realized in the course of this conversation is that it's important for me to see where my parents or my mom is coming from, as an example, because in that seeing where they're coming from, it gives me the ability to be not just understanding, but to be empowered to try on a different way of handling my relationship with her, my
right.
communication with her. So it doesn't necessarily have to be reactive. Yeah, because now that
Mhm.
I have that distance, that now that I have that awareness na para, oh, dito siya nanggagaling or baka dito siya nanggagaling or wait, gusto ko muna siyang intindihin kasi baka hindi naman yan yung that's not what she meant to do or that's not what she means. It
Right.
gives me the freedom and the power na parang, so kung if she's coming from that place, wait, what if I try something else? What if I don't be reactive? What if I don't react even, What if I
Mhm.
just be more understanding? So it gives you kindness. It gives you the leeway for
Mhm.
understanding. So
Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is that parents, what's one of the lines in one of my favorite movies, The Mirror Has Two Faces? The mom of Barbara Streisand says that, you know what, a lot of times parents, they don't set out to hurt their kids. they
Mm-hmm.
never meant to, you know, but it
Mm-hmm.
just so happens that, you know, since they don't know
Yeah.
how to handle it, that's the result. Yeah,
Yeah.
so a lot of times they don't mean it, you know. So
Yeah. And yan, like, that's so true kasi when I work with families, parang yun yung talaga yung that's always the model that we go after na meron talaga tong caregiver intent, or the intent of the caregiver is to always provide care. But there's always like either a block or something that happens that gets in the way of providing that in a way na the child would receive it, right?
uh-huh.
Kasi talagang merong block, right? But I was gonna say yung other piece then sa why parents then talk to others about it. Now chismis, right? It can be viewed as chismis. But I can imagine then that's their way of yun nga, processing it in a
Hmm.
way about their
Yeah,
feelings or about the
yeah,
situation. So they talk about it with other people. Or they consult because right, they don't know what to do.
yeah,
Right. So
yeah,
they find themselves consulting in the form of
yeah,
chismis
yeah,
because really they don't know what else to do,
yeah,
right? And so that's the thing, and wala namang therapist sa atin, at least kind of growing up, right? So we
yeah,
just, who do we talk to? Either sa
yeah,
priest or other
yeah,
parents, right?
yeah.
Because talagang we don't know what else to do, right?
See, I feel like now that you mentioned it, and I was connecting it also with what you shared with journal writing, because I also write a lot. Well, yeah, especially when I was younger, you know, to help process the feelings. Actually, if you see the similarity, the parallelism behind journal writing and how our parents, you know, consult with other people, it gives you empathy also, eh. Na
Mm-hmm.
parang mas naiintindihan mo na parang, gosh, if I were in their shoes, I wouldn't have any other choice also but to just talk about my kid, about, I mean, to other people, you know, the
Mm-hmm.
same way that I am trying to process also by writing on my journal,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So
Yeah.
yeah, sorry, I just, yeah, it's,
Yeah.
yeah, I couldn't help but connect it. So yeah.
Connected. Yeah, yeah. I'm sure. Like, what we're hoping then is like as we talk about this more sa episode natin, yun nga, like I can see for you, Lay, parang may mga things na nagka-click na, and then for our listeners then, no, na may magka-click
Yeah.
na something, putting things
Uh-oh.
together. Yung other thing din na sinabi ko dito why parents get reactive is,
Mm,
I talked about it earlier na, di ba sabi ko kanina, like fear of making things worse when talked about, and just fear in general, right? Fear of our kids getting hurt. So, meron akong personal example, like when I was a teenager, like I had like meron akong differences with my parents. And I can imagine yung dad ko had like a big reaction, right, to something. And dad, if you're listening, you know what I'm talking about. So my dad had this big reaction and teenager ako noon. And so for me, it's like nung all I could see as a teenager was my dad's big reaction. It didn't make sense to me. Like, why would he
mm,
react that way, right? Parang
yeah,
hindi ko gets, right?
yeah.
But I can imagine like it's coming from this place of fear. It's
Mm,
fear na masasaktan ako, fear na something might happen to me, fear na I'm gonna, parang, ano yan, parang compromise my future, yung ganun ba? So it's
yeah.
coming from that, right? And the yucky part is that when fear comes up, like hindi mo siya ma-explain, tapos kasi fear is like hindi siya, it's a primary emotion, right? So nasa ilalim siya. It looks on the surface as anger, frustration, all of these things. So hindi natin alam, hindi natin nakikita kaagad na it's coming from this place of fear. Basta na lang tayo mag-react. But
Uh-huh.
really, when we distill it and it looks as fear, oh my God, it's like, oh shit, you're coming from this place pala, and it looks so different and it feels so different when we see just a parent that's
Mm,
just scared,
yeah, yeah,
scared, right?
yeah.
Whether it's a parent na, if you think about it, parent to like a toddler na is about to like run off into the traffic, same kind of fear.
Mm,
It's the same fear sa isang parent sa teenager na feeling like this teenager is gonna make a dumb mistake. It's
yeah.
essentially the same thing, the same fear, no? So when we put it in that context, or
Mm,
whether it's a parent with an older, like an adult child, that also gonna make a mistake or like make a decision, it's the
Yeah.
same fear, that
Right.
drives us. So it's also big.
Yeah.
This is why we get
Mhm.
reactive.
Yeah.
No, I mean, any thoughts on that,
It's
Lay?
the I was just thinking about how influential role expectations are,
Mm,
right? Because you mentioned about how parents are afraid, and a lot of times also the kids have an expectation of how parents should be. They should be the brave one. They should have things together.
mm-hmm,
They shouldn't have fear, because they've grown up,
mm-hmm,
and they've
mm-hmm.
gone past through that.
And
But
figured it all out.
yeah, figured it all out and all that. But a lot of times that's not the case. Um, that's why role expectations, parang how parents should be, what kids should be, etc. They create a lot of chaos. Kasi parang at the end of the day, we're all the same in the sense that we all have that primal emotion which is
Mm-hmm,
fear. We
mm-hmm,
all react to fear, and it may
mm-hmm.
manifest in different ways, anger, etc.,
Exactly.
etc. But we all have that fear. So yeah, I guess it's important kasi to realize these things, no? Na kasi like when I was having a conversation with a friend about our parents, about her mother, she was talking about her mother and how reactive she is. She continues to be with her mother, and how her mother also is reactive towards her. Parang we both agreed na parang, not parang, but we both agreed that we are our parents in the sense that not only are we their kids, but as human as they are. We are as stubborn as they are. We are as
Yeah.
afraid as they are.
Yeah.
And when we both agreed on that, parang, well, she realizes earlier on, that's why she was sharing her story. She realized that, you know what, I don't have to react any, I don't have to react that way to my parents anymore. Now that that expectation is thrown out of the window,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
now that I
mm-hmm,
don't have to expect her to be the brave one. Now that I realize that
mm-hmm,
she's just as
mm-hmm.
afraid as I am, that she's
Yeah.
just as insecure as I am, then I can meet her halfway because I'm
Mm-hmm,
insecure as well. So I just found that really powerful. And as much as role expectations are influential and have a
mm-hmm,
strong hold on relationships, but when you realize that you're all the same with your fear,
mm-hmm.
it's
Patas
it's
lang.
powerful. Oh, patas lang, kasi parang eventually you'll find that common ground, you'll have empathy, and
Yeah.
then it's quite empowering actually.
Yeah.
It's quite empowering
Yeah.
because it gives you access to try something different, na parang
Mm-hmm.
like with that friend of mine, the way she'll communicate with her mom would be more understanding. Parang iba na yung pagkatrato niya.
Yeah.
Kung nakita niya yung mom niya being a certain way, hindi na siya mag knee-jerk reaction. Kasi
Mm-hmm,
alam niya na
mm-hmm,
na kung saan nanggagaling yung mom niya. Alam niya rin kung saan nanggagaling yung knee-jerk reaction niya.
mm-hmm,
Her own
mm-hmm,
knee-jerk reaction, where it's coming from. So
mm-hmm,
there's a lot of understanding happening as long as you have that awareness. So
mm-hmm.
yeah, and she also admits that it's a process, and I admit that
Yeah.
too. Like the way I
Yeah.
am with my family, with my relationships with people, with everyone around me,
Mm-hmm,
it's a process. There are days that I'm just not understanding. There
mm-hmm,
are days that I'm just whiny and I'm a bitch, and I'm a rebel.
mm-hmm,
Pero now that I have access to it, parang I have, and I'm a little bit more aware. I have access to na parang, okay, I'm gonna give myself time to be
mm-hmm,
bitchy, to be whiny, and then I'll try a different tack next time.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So that for me is really empowering. And I don't think it's
Yeah.
ever gonna go away. I don't think I'll be perfect in the future.
No,
And
nobody will be.
yeah, but what's fun is na parang you're trying different ways.
Mm-hmm.
You're yeah. There's movement. There's growth, I
There's
guess.
growth. Yeah.
Yeah, there's growth. Yeah.
Yeah. And as with growth, right? Hindi siya talagang linear. Merong
Yeah.
ganun yung growth, right? Hindi siya like
Yeah.
straight line, no? Okay. Yung yung on the other side naman, right? We talked
Yeah.
about a little bit more on the parents where they were coming from. And for me naman, just to talk a little bit about yung effects ng kids. Kasi, ito yung the majority of the population that I work with and that I actually love to work with is yung clients ko, individual clients, also that really struggle with making sense of their emotions or that, find it hard to talk about emotions.
Mm,
So I can imagine then na kung the parents are not available dahil whether they're already reactive or yung parents are already withdrawn or avoidant or shut down or yeah. So it's hard kasi then I talked about it earlier, no? Because we think about yung parents as like a mirror. So kung when they kind of like show yung mirror nila, tapos yung kids, when it's their turn to kind of share, but they're reactive or they're not available. So they don't get a chance to be able to reflect or process of their feelings. No, so they don't know, kids will then not know how to make sense of their own emotions.
mm,
No. And so because essentially what the kids will feel like they have to do, which is shut down or like they go inward. So they
yeah.
they take it upon themselves to like figure out yung feelings nila.
Yeah.
Tapos sila na yung they draw their own conclusion about their feelings. And while some part of it developmentally naman is healthy, but I can see then especially for younger kids, it's hard, right? Kasi
Yeah.
I mean, I think for me as a parent, gusto ko na I want to be part of the process because I want to help my child process it. Na hindi lang na siya mag-figure out kasi a lot of times, syempre, the way their brains are, hindi pa siya formed. And so maybe some of what she's just taking in is hindi appropriate or ganon, no?
Mm,
So yan yung concern is that they don't know how to make sense of their emotions. No,
mm,
um, if they feel like when yun nga, the parent is not available, and I'm guilty of this too. Because earlier when I get impatient, ako ito yung parang biggest thing ko. I get impatient, and so minsan pinapatulog ko yung anak ko, and I'm like, oh tara tulog na tayo, ganyan ganyan. And when she's just talking to me and I'm not available, kasi I'm already so caught up in here's the protective part of me. This is the fear part. I want her to get as much sleep so that
mm,
she does well in school, so that she's not tired at school, so she can associate, so they can socialize well at school, ganon, para hindi siya
yeah.
pagod. So
Yeah.
that's my fear, right? So,
Yeah.
force ko siyang, kamatulog na. But then siya, and because malaki na yung reaction ko, and my kid shuts down, wala. And she's left to her own devices, figure out her
Mm,
feelings.
yeah.
So, na-internalize na, right? So,
Yeah.
nasa loob lang yun, you
Is
know?
this is this what they call self-soothing when they internalize and they just make do with what they know?
Essentially, yeah. So
Yeah.
a lot of kids mag-self-soothe, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's hugging yung favorite, plushie nila,
Yeah.
whether you essentially you rock yourself essentially, right?
Yeah.
Yung ano mo,
Yeah.
yung hair mo, right? You do
Ah,
all of these things. You can do this as
manifests.
like a coping din, pero I can
Yeah.
see then self-soothing then becomes like to once you have access to things, meaning it's eating and it's drinking and
Yeah.
smoking and
Yeah. Yeah.
all of
Yeah.
those things, right?
Yeah.
Essentially, right? So
Oh.
yun yung parang nagiging,
Yeah.
result then, right?
So it's
Yeah.
really important, no, like having ha- g- I don't know what adjective, but I know the noun. I mean, it's important to have conversations,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's important. I mean, like I said earlier, I mean, since we don't have access, not everybody has access to all of these books and professional
Mm-hmm.
advice, etc. Therapists, uh, having a conversation, a safe conversation,
Mm-hmm.
or is it can really, it does matter, right?
Mm-hmm.
It does matter,
Sobra.
because I mean, it helps you process both
Mm-hmm.
ends, right? It helps you
Mm-hmm.
process. It helps establish like a secure relationship between the both of you,
That one. Mm-hmm.
and even in the future, parang it allows you, parang, okay, I feel safe with this person. So the next time I share about my emotions or I share about something, I know that I can do so freely without having to be dismissed or be
Mm-hmm.
ignored or reprimanded or mocked.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so I feel like it's not just between parents and child. I mean, it goes back to that again, any relationship, right? Even
Yeah.
between friends.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And tapos yung another thing that affects the kids, right? Because
mhm,
a lot of times kung if essentially kung ginagawa sa parents is like constantly sweeping things under the rug instead of like discussing things, some of my clients then report na yung essentially because things were not talked about, they
yeah,
develop an intolerance to conflicts. So when they're in their own romantic
mm,
relationships,
yeah,
um, tapos may conflict or like
yeah,
may discussion. It's not even a conflict. It's just like an argument, right?
yeah,
Which is
yeah,
healthy, right? I mean,
yeah,
that's how it is. Tapos biglang may intolerance, and ako, I myself, I'm guilty of this.
yeah.
Wherein because there isn't that
So am
sense
I.
of like, yeah, talking
Yeah,
about it.
yeah,
Nako, when my husband would share his feelings and is very passionate when he shares his feelings, for
yeah.
me, his loud voice signals danger
Got it.
or conflict or I'm in
Yeah,
trouble
yeah,
or I did something wrong.
yeah,
So yun kagad and my brain is hijacked and I
yeah,
can't communicate with him because I shut down.
yeah,
And I'm just like, yep, okay, okay,
yeah.
okay. So talagang nagiging nagpe-placate ako kasi I
Mm,
don't know what else to do,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So ayoko ng conflict. It's either I placate, so okay lang, yes lang, yes, or I shut down and I walk away.
yeah,
And then he's like, oh my God, like, sana yung partner ko? Like, how
yeah,
am I supposed to? So yun, nag-develop ako ng intolerance. But obviously, like, as I, parang, as we got to therapy, at sa akin din, personal development, like, no,
yeah.
hindi ka pinapagalitan ng asawa mo. Like,
Mm,
hindi siya galit sa'yo. Like, he's trying to have a conversation with you and it's okay. Conflicts are okay. Or at least
yeah,
arguments are okay. It's a
yeah,
discussion, right?
right. Yeah, yeah. I thought of the way I am during conflicts when you just shared that. Kasi ako, in as much as I can, make light of the situation, make jokes, make people laugh, and I can be quite loquacious, and talk. There are moments actually I see and I know this, and people see this too, that I shut down when there's a conflict or when
Mm-hmm.
there's something I don't agree on. Like I just shut up. And then, but you know that something's happening because I don't know, you can feel it, right? You can feel
Yeah.
the other person when they've shut down na parang may nangyayari pa rin, but they just don't want to talk.
Yeah.
So it's either it's pursed lips or I don't know, it's the heat that you feel when you're beside
Mm-hmm.
them, or the
Mm-hmm.
quivering, you know. Ako, I shut down. So talagang I just don't want to communicate anymore. So in as much as I love communication, talagang I also
Yeah.
shut down and all that. And with what you're sharing is because I don't know how to process my feelings. That's one. And then two, I've gotten used to being, I guess, so amenable.
Mm-hmm.
So para I don't want to say something that might be hurtful at the
Mm-hmm.
expense of my being able to express myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
parang yeah. So all the more parang I end up getting even more frustrated. Parang kulang na
Mm-hmm.
lang may mga, you know, ano yun, yung smoke na parang cartoon
It's
na parang,
right.
or parang
Coming out.
the eyeballs would pop
The-
out. So but
exactly.
yeah, actually my sister notices this, that apparently when I'm really bitchy and I don't want to say something, like my lips, they're like like I'm
Yeah.
pursing it,
And
you
first,
know. Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting, na parang when you step out of yourself or when you have a conversation
yeah.
with somebody and now how you see yourself, you get to see yourself, right?
Yeah.
You get to be more self-aware of who you are, how you react, etc. It's
Yeah.
That's why I enjoy conversations. Yeah. So yeah.
I know yung sinasabi mo na yung pursing sa lips, yung husband ko din, like when I say something, right? And then, and then, and then may look ako, because he knows. I don't know what that look is. He has to describe it to me. He's like, oh, what's going on? Sabi ko, oh, nothing. Ganun ako. Kasi ganun yung style ko noong una, no? Oh, nothing. No, tell me. No, nothing. Ganun ako. but
Yeah.
there's something
Yeah.
he can
Yeah.
sense, right? Because my mind is like spinning. And so ito
Yeah.
na yung nakakita niya. So I'd be curious for him to tell me like, ano yun nakikita niya? Like, is it my face? Is it my eyes or something, right? I'm
Take
sure
a
because it
picture.
I know this is what you look like. You're shutting down, right? And then the next time you see me like this, hindi nangyayari. But yeah, I know. Oh my God. But yeah, yung last point ko lang, it kind of
Yeah.
piggybacks yung sa isang sense, sa isang first part na, then
Mm.
kids don't know how to make sense of their emotions. Yeah,
Yeah.
kasi yun nga, yung parang the sensation that we have to keep in yung feeling. So, a lot of times kasi we don't have anybody to help make sense of our emotions kasi yung parents nga are just either reacting or like not available in a sense. So, yun nga, parang nobody's helping you figure it out. So in a sense, we find ourselves like either second guessing kung ano yung feeling
Mm.
natin, right? Or really not sure about kung anong gagawin natin. So there's a lot of self-doubt, right?
Mm.
That could possibly happen kasi yun nga, we don't have that mirror. So we don't
Yeah.
have a sense and an understanding or um we were just doubting ourselves essentially,
Yeah.
right? So yun
Yeah.
yung last point ko on that.
Mm.
But so yung after we've talked about that, yung essentially, I know not all hope is lost essentially
Yes.
after this. And also,
Yeah.
I was gonna say na hindi naman yung parang expectation of parents to be like these perfect parents that will be readily available sa kids. Pero yung sa akin lang, one of the things I can I kind of put together now probably can help is that really having this sense na conflicts are okay, arguments are okay. I have couples that see me and say, "Oh, like we're okay. Hindi kami nag-argue." But for me, I mean, for some people they wear like that like a badge of honor. But sa akin din is like for me, arguments are actually very healthy because it helps to parang it keeps the relationship going and it shows you that people are still wanting to fight for the relationship.
Uh-huh.
No, because
Uh-huh.
there's still that. So don't shield your kids away from it. Don't protect your kids from having like
Yeah.
arguments or discussions or
Yeah.
passionate, discussions because the differences are normal.
Yeah.
And how do you sort out differences? By talking about it. No,
Mm.
talking about it in a way na respectful pa din, na no name calling naman, cussing
Yeah.
or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
Kasi that's how it's supposed to be done. As opposed to like, oh, my differences, chup, ganon. Hindi naman
Yeah.
dapat ganon, right?
Yeah.
So having that, healthy conflict tsaka discussion is
Yeah.
super essential. No?
And I think that discord is a signal, that something is wrong or something is not agreed upon and all that. That's
Mm-hmm.
why all the more it's important to address it.
Yeah.
That's why it's important. That's why having conflict now is important. Yeah. So yeah, I agree with
Yeah.
what you said. Yeah.
I know. And then kailangan din na parang when conflicts arise, like make sure then, let's say for example, kung merong conflicts that arise, like make sure na you create that space then, especially for kids that witness yung medyo heated discussion.
Yeah.
Make sure then that you create space for that to talk about it with your kids. No? So like for example, how did that feel like, for example, when my husband and I have a heated argument? Like usually I turn to the kids like, oh, how is that for you? Okay lang ba sa'yo? How's that like for you to see mom and daddy that way? Or minsan
Yeah.
ngayon, because they're, yung oldest goes like super like aware now. So it's like, oh, this is how I felt like, oh, I noticed now you and daddy were arguing. Like, yeah, it happens. But
Yeah.
how are you with it? Right. So
Yeah.
having that discussion and opening that, checking
Mm-hmm.
in with them, how they felt
Yeah.
about it,
Yeah.
and then helping them make sense of emotions nila. Because obviously it doesn't feel, I'm imagining, obviously it doesn't feel good to see yung parents mo like do that. But if you
Yeah.
explain to them now, we were just trying to sort out something different lang. We were trying to sort out
Yeah.
something and that we're
Yeah.
okay lang kami,
Yeah.
then it helps kind of normalize it, no?
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
don't run away from like conflicts or
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
differences. They learn to be able to do that then
Yeah.
in their own social circle.
I thought about
No?
uh a sort of an argument I had with my friends before. We were having a discussion about something that I wasn't agreeing about. And then I just felt unheard because there was just so much advice that this is what you should do, this is what you should
Mm,
try,
mm, mm.
this is what I did, and maybe this could help you and all that. And I was beginning to get triggered and annoyed because I felt I was just kakasabi ko lang eh, na para I'm just trying to share, and then here I am being bombarded with
Yeah,
advice,
yeah,
and all
yeah.
that. So I saw myself shut down, and then what I appreciated about them after was because the conversation, they apologized. Yeah, so they
Mm,
said sorry
mm,
that, oh, Leo, we just realized that you were actually not asking us to give you advice, but kakasabi mo lang nga that you were not looking for advice, you just wanted to share, and here we are bombarding you with advice. So that really meant a
mm,
lot to me. And it goes without, I mean, the reason why I mentioned that is because even in familiar relationships, like, apologies are important when you have these these discordant conversations,
mm,
because parang you explain where you were coming from.
mm.
And then if you receive kasi an apology, syempre, you also try to explain where you're coming from. I mean, usually that's
Yeah.
the natural recourse, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
um, in doing so, parang you both see each other's ends. And what I'm basically pointing out is having to go back to that other person after like something heated or something massive
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
is necessary because ayun nga, it establishes empathy. One side, you could see both sides,
Yeah.
right? You can see both
Yeah.
sides. That's why it's important, yeah, to, aside from having healthy conflict, is to have healthy conversations after about
Yeah.
it. Yeah. So
Yeah.
sometimes, I mean, like when me and my friends have these understandings and then we actually laugh about it. We joke about it after kasi di ba sabi mo before ganyan? Like that. And then, and then it repeats itself. And hindi naman yun yung what I meant eh.
Yeah.
Tapos ako para, yeah, I mean, it's something to look back fondly on. So it doesn't have to be necessarily something to fear anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Parang na-transform na siya and all that.
Exactly. Kaysa naman na dinibdib, I mean, kaysa naman you kept it in, right?
Yeah,
Yung things, right? Then
yeah,
that would like seed, ano ba, resentment over
yeah.
time. No.
Kasi like another thing I want to share, like sometimes when me and my brother, um, have these misunderstandings and I'm already shutting down and he's, getting angry or whatever, and or we talk back at each other. When we do have our apologies after, it's transformed into something jovial.
Mm.
Eventually, like he's like, because you're such a bitch. And then instead of me reacting to that, I'm immediately like, yeah, I am. I am. Like, I am. So there you go. I am a big bitch, so it's not even about sweeping it under the rug or hiding it in the guise of a joke.
Mhm.
It's that because you've processed it na parang
Mhm.
you've seen where the other person's coming from.
Mhm.
He's explained his side, you've explained your side. So it's a healthy kind of exchange.
Mhm.
So the result is understanding,
Mhm.
transformative, like you
Mhm.
can transform it into, something light and all that. Pero that's how powerful it is, like
Yeah.
having that safe space to have that
Yeah.
exchange. Yeah, so
Exactly. Yeah. That's yung last point ko lang is that
yeah.
yun nga, kasi I think some parents like don't want to talk about these things with their kids kasi for fear of making it worse, right? But, actually opening a conversation with your kids is not going to make it worse. You're actually helping them sort out yung feelings nila, and you're making sense of the yuckiness and you're normalizing the yuckiness of
Uh-huh.
feelings. And you're
Yeah,
just normalizing the yuckiness of life events because
yeah,
life is not going to be pretty, right? So
yeah,
in a sense parang you're helping them guide through that because that is what life is going to be like. No, it
yeah,
is going to be yucky, it is going to be messy, but if you parang create these pathways or these conversations with your child, then ma-empower mo yung kid mo, right?
yeah,
Then it would be normalized, then you would make them feel empowered, you would make them feel confident Na kung merong things that get in the way, which is like, oh, like for example, there's a situation with this classmate and they're older, right? So then they'll be able to like work it amongst themselves kasi hindi ka na available niyan, right? You're not going to be available, the parent at school, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
By that time, may interest mo yung kid mo and being able to sort that out themselves kasi you've already, done that essentially. But I know then yung ibang parents either feel helpless or feel like unsure about how to like go about it. So sa akin din, like when in doubt, you can always parang tag team with the other parent. If there's another parent in the home, you can always tag team, or you can talk about it with other trusted people or talk about it with other trusted professionals.
Yeah.
No? Kasi alam ko din like different yung capacities natin,
Mm,
but it's good to also like, consult and talk about these things kung feeling mo
mm,
talaga na nahihirapan ka, right?
yeah.
Or like you don't know how to be able to do
Mm,
it.
yeah. 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 It's a. I just. I. Because I've observed some people na parang it's so difficult for them to open up nga topics that are triggering,
Mhm,
and I remember another friend of mine said that it's important to have braver discussions,
mhm,
right? It's
mhm,
important na to put that out there because actually what's even scarier is if you don't put it out there because ayun nga, you're left to your own devices. I'm speaking you spoke about how kids react and how it's important for kids, to be in a safe kind of exchange. Um in my experience, adults also need that.
mhm,
Adults also need that na they need to have braver discussions. Um, they need to not be afraid that it will explode in their face.
mhm,
Because it goes back to what you said about hope earlier, and I wrote about this actually. Because once you have that empathy, once you have that understanding, in as much as you fall flat on your face, and I know this from my own experience, because when I do fall
mhm,
flat on my face, when I try to have a conversation with somebody that matters to me, one, I rest well on the fact that the mere idea that I'm trying to work hard on it means that they still matter to me.
mhm,
That's
mhm.
one.
Exactly, exactly.
Um, and that that instills in me a hope. You know, the
Mhm,
mere fact that it matters that I equate it to hopefulness.
mhm,
And then part of that hopefulness is that I can always try again. If it didn't work the last time, I'll try another way.
mhm.
I'll just keep on trying. Um, Yeah, because like I mentioned earlier, it's just a process, it's a constant thing, and nobody
Mhm,
gets it right the first time, and nobody ever gets it actually, eventually never gets it. Nothing is perfect, I mean, that's just the way
mhm.
things are. But the hopefulness of it all is that you can always try.
Mhm.
And as long as it matters, that means that there is no love lost. Because I feel like a lot of times that's the reason where the fear comes from is because I might lose the love of that other person.
Mhm.
Pero people don't see na parang there is a lot of love even in conflict,
Yep.
in relational
Y-
conflicts.
Yeah. Because you're fighting for
Yeah.
the relationship, diba? The
Yeah.
fact that you're fighting, the fact that you're still coming forward,
Yeah.
you still wanna give it a go,
Yeah.
right? You're still, I know, you wanna fight for it essentially.
I remember this one episode sa Queer as Folk. Um, yes, I am telling of my age, but sa Queer as Folk, which is they were gonna adopt. This gay couple were gonna adopt, and then parang the social worker was gonna visit. So talagang they made every effort to make it a perfect setup.
Mm.
And the kid was just rebellious. He was roaming around in his underwear. And then eventually, the mom of one of the parents visited and they started fighting, arguing. Everybody was arguing. And then the social worker arrived. And then they were like, shit, we might lose the kid because we're going to adopt that kid, that
Mhm.
teenager.
Mhm.
But eventually, when they did have a discussion with a social worker, she says that, you know what? You should see me and my mom. We fight just as bad as you do. But one of the things that stood out to me was that there was a lot of love in that room, and as much as you guys were cussing at each other and yelling, I guess what she saw was, because it mattered that much.
Yeah.
to you guys, that you were willing
Yeah.
to fight for it, for each
Yeah.
other.
For each other,
So yeah,
exactly. Sobra,
yeah,
sobra. Yeah. Yeah. So
yeah,
those are our thoughts, about this
yeah.
topic. I hope na our listeners were able to find, some nuggets, some like helpful
Mm,
insights. Because this is like really parang relatable. Because obviously, like we all come from families, it's so relatable, no?
mm,
And hopefully na you all found something naman that you can
mm,
kind of like take with you and take with you
mm.
in your relationships, whether it's like yung parents nyo or yung kids nyo, or like with your significant
Yeah, or
other.
with your friends or
You,
colleagues,
yeah.
this ability to just have safe, rather enable a safe space for conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the process, you become more empathetic, you become more understanding, and you
Mm-hmm.
try a different way of being. So you don't have to just be blind and react.
Yeah,
You can try,
exactly.
yeah, you can try another way of being.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so that's it, folks. Like, as always, like if you have any questions or follow-up comments or even
Mm.
topic suggestions, you can always reach us out sa socials namin, so sa Facebook or sa Instagram. Any other parting words, Lay?
Oh, even YouTube, yeah.
YouTube
We
then.
want to remind
Yes.
people that we do have a YouTube channel now, and I think this is going to be our third. This is our third, right? Our
This is
third
our third.
episode that
Yes, tama.
has a video.
We're
Yeah,
gonna, yes, yes. So we're gonna do these from now on. So yeah, we also have YouTube, so you can always also post in doon.
yeah.
Okay.
So we look
All
forward to
right.
hearing you guys, and we're excited to record the next episode, and hopefully it'll be one of what you're dying to talk about. Yeah,
Yeah. All right, everyone. We'll see you next time.
yeah. Bye bye.
Bye.